And that's kind of the approach that I've taken now that I have clarity around what happened in my past.
Right.
Created the person and the, emotional intelligence that I have today. Alrighty, it is time to stop hitting snooze and awaken to a life worth being, the fun and inspiring podcast that dives deep into what makes life truly fulfilling. I'm your host, Sue Willoughby, a self-proclaimed badass transformational life coach for women over 40. Join me as I explore the extraordinary journeys of ordinary people who've transformed their lives from the inside out. Tune in weekly to uncover the secrets to smashing through your perceived limits and creating a life that's not just well lived, but totally worth being. I'm your host, Sue Willoughby, and I am so excited to be here today. Today is my very, very, very first episode of A Life Worth Being, and I've got some very special co-hosts in here today. The reason I chose to launch my podcast on June 25th is because it's my mom's birthday. Now, if she were still here, she would be 92 years old. And we had a rather complicated and intense relationship, but I wanted to dedicate my very first episode of my podcast to her. So, Mom, if you're listening, happy birthday and thank you for everything. All right, I want to get into it right now. I've got Britney and Ed Holmes here. They are not just friends, they're neighbors. They live in my sweet little town of Enumclaw, Washington. And the best town. And they were introduced to me through a mutual friend, Anne, and she said, "You know what? My friends Anne, or my friends Ed and Brittany live in Enumclaw. I think you guys had hit it off," and we totally did. So
We did.
they're now my creative partners. Like I said, they're my neighbors and my good friends. So Ed and Brittany, welcome to A Life Worth Being, and thank you so much for being here for my very first episode.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We're excited to do this with you today.
Yay!
Okay, so we're ready to get into it?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Okay, so Sue, we know from obviously past conversations with you, your mom meant a lot to you. And like you said, there was a complicated relationship there.
Yeah.
Can you tell us just a little bit about your mom and her influence on your life?
Yeah, thanks, Brittany. That she was a very interesting person. She was very talented. She was a funny lady. She liked to tell jokes and make people laugh. That's probably where I got my sense of humor from. Although she used to tell some really weird off-color kind of dad jokes, right? But she also had an amazing singing voice. She performed "You'll Never Walk Alone" at my cousin's wedding, and it was just stunning. But the thing is, she had such low self-esteem. She lost both of her parents at a relatively young age. Her dad when she was 12, and her mom after a battle with diabetes and I think some other things at 18. So she went to live in a situation that was, it turned out wasn't exactly the best situation for her. So she had a lot of deep-seated trauma and emotions that she never dealt with, except through drinking. So that was a little challenging by the time that I came along. So,
Yeah.
How do you think her humor, singing voice, like you mentioned that it probably had an impact on your humor, right? Like, how did seeing her show up that way in life impact you?
Well, she was really big on show tunes from the singing aspect. So we had a piano in our living room, and she was constantly trying to get me to perform. It was just not my forte. I'll tell you that right now. But she also had this amazing ability to talk to people. She would just go up and talk to everyone, which I found absolutely mortifying. And I was just so embarrassed that she would talk to everyone. But it really, it was a gift. And I think I also kind of grew into that myself, even though I tend to be a little bit introverted, which most people would not suspect of me. But it was funny when she was younger, she was on an airplane. She was in the Naval Reserves, and this was way before I came along. And she was on an airplane, and that was back when it was fancy. You're all dressed up and you can like smoke and do crazy things in airplanes. And she was sitting next to this guy, and she looked over and he had this huge book on his lap. And she's like, oh, great. I'm sitting next to a bookworm. This is going to be a fun flight. So I'm pretty sure she probably ordered a martini or two. Anyway, she got talking to this guy, and he was headed to New York as well to cast for his new show. And the show was Requiem for a Heavyweight. And the guy that she was sitting next to was Rod Serling.
Wow.
So funny. So they made some bet about what nationality the stewardess was, and my mom lost, so she had to buy him a drink at Sardi's. So that was back in the day. I think that was like 1954 or something. So like I said, she met some amazing people just by talking to everyone.
Wow.
So that's the extroverted side of her.
Mm-hmm.
But you also mentioned that she coped a lot with drinking. So what
She
was
coped
your
with it. She
drink?
just did.
Yeah. Yeah, she just drank a lot. Yeah. So
Yeah,
what,
She numbed with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
so what was your relationship to that?
Not good. Not good. Growing up with an alcoholic parent is challenging. I grew up really fast. I was the adult in the household, and my parents did stay together until I was about 11, which was, they did it for the good of the child, which I probably would not agree with. But, I had the option to live with my mom or my dad, and I did choose my mom. But it was challenging. So because I never knew what I was going to get, it was just, so I was always on guard, I guess. And that also shaped me in my, not quite trusting people and being, putting up these walls around myself, later in life. And also then the other thing I inherited from her, if it's possible, was the drinking gene. So that was really awesome. And I drank more, I think, for the ability to fit in, or think that you're fitting in. And so that was another challenge.
Yeah. With how you saw her cope or not cope through drinking and how that affected in your life, how did kind of experiencing this vivacious, connected part with her that you were describing of how she was always talking to other people and meeting really unique people, like as a kid, how did you kind of navigate both of those, what's the word? Like two very different parts of her.
Jekyll and
Yes.
Hyde. Yeah. That's an interesting question. And I don't know that I saw it that way. I think in my body, right, and in my mind, I knew that the scary one was underneath all of that, and never quite knew when it was going to come out. So, it did create a little friction and distance. Like I said, especially as I got older. And I was a little bit more self-aware and aware of, what I was really dealing with or not dealing with, or trying to figure out what to deal with.
Yeah. What do you think now, knowing what you know, obviously having the life experiences that you have, if your mom was here, like in this conversation with us, what do you think that she would have wanted to do different for you?
That's interesting. I do know that, you can tell when something is sort of beyond someone's control, right? Obviously. But I think that because of the era when she grew up, and all of the things that she was facing, there's a couple of other things that she had that she was dealing with as well. that, you know, you didn't have the resources that we do now. So I think if she were here today, she might, and in this time with all of the resources that we have for self-awareness and self-help, she may have been more inclined to do some more personal work, I think.
Yeah.
I'd like to think so. But she just couldn't. It was not something that she could grasp. And, you know, when I think back now in retrospect, that I wish that she could have, and been able to talk about things, but it was too painful for her. So that, you know, that, I think maybe that's what she might do differently. I would like to think so. Yeah.
Do you feel like that's had a pretty significant influence on your career now as a transformational life coach?
Absolutely.
Like from what you saw her go through?
Yeah, absolutely. And I wish I had a coach or some sort of adult supervision and support when I was a kid, right?
Yeah.
Because I was kind of out there. It was me, myself, and we were team figure this shit out. And that's what I did. It wasn't, there was a lot of spaghetti on the wall, right? Because that's how I just kind of got through life. Just throw something up against the wall and see what sticks. You know, so it wasn't, I did not take the straightest, smoothest path to where I am today, but it was still a journey, and I did learn so much about myself. And I feel like that gave me the ability to get beyond and not be in that same situation.
Yeah, that's something I remember one of my mentors and coaches said to me that has stuck with me is it's so powerful when we can look back at even the painful parts of our life and see how it's actually happened for us instead of to us.
Absolutely.
Like when we can have that perspective, it changes everything that we can create.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, you know, people measure growth by, or they measure where they are by where they want to be rather than where they've come from. And if you even look back, you know, a year, 2 years, 5 years and say, oh my God, I'm in such a different place than I was back then, rather than thinking like, oh, I need to be out there at that next level, at that next place, and beat yourself up because you're not there. It's like, but look where you are now.
Right.
So your journey with your sexuality was also influenced by your mom, right? So
Maybe.
in the sense of like her relationship to that and her openness had an impact on you, right? So
Sort of.
tie those
together.
question together.
Yes, it's funny. Thank you for asking, Ed. Yeah, the other thing that she was wrestling with was, you know, being something that she wasn't, right? You know, she married my dad to get out of the house and to, you know, get away from a situation. But she wasn't happy because in her heart of hearts, she was gay, you know, she was a lesbian. And back then, like I said, you know, she was born in 1932 and it was 50s, 60s, 70s, you know, it was very different back then. So whether I was influenced like that, I don't know that external influence is a thing when it comes to sexuality. I think you're either born one way or another. But yeah, so it was funny. When I was 17, I still remember I was cutting her hair. Yeah, I'm a beauty school dropout too, but I hadn't even gone to beauty school at that point. So I had
18 lives.
Right. So I remember telling her, I was like, you know, I got up the courage and I was like, Mom, you know, here's the deal. I'm gay and at that time, I think I finally had met someone, or I was at least exploring, right? And, you know, when I was 17 back then, we were like, it was in the 70s, you know, you put an ad in the personal section of the weird, you know, local newspaper or something. And awkward. There was no swiping. Right. Yeah. There was no swiping back then. So I told her, and you know, it was no big deal to her, clearly. And so she was like, "Yeah, this is my opportunity. I can unload this on my daughter now. Thank you." And so she told me, she's like, "Well, my friend Jackie, we're not just friends." And I'm like, "Duh, hello, we've been vacationing with Jackie and her 3 kids for the past 5 years. We have sleepovers at their house. I'm like, really? So I think she felt better about that, but still in her life and in her mind, she was always still closeted, you know. I think she wanted to not be seen that way, which was interesting. But, you know, and a lot of kids, I think, would think that it was cool because if their parent was gay as well, you know, take a lot of the pressure off. And I guess in that regard, it was, you know, I wasn't disowned. I wasn't kicked out of the house. I wasn't, you know, abused or anything else for my choices. But when I worked in gay bars, which I did, and I would just hang out, guess who would show up? Mom.
Your mom.
Hi. Yeah, that was fun. My friends all thought she was really cool, and you know, but it's like your mother. Would you like your mom to come and hang out with you? I mean, well, I don't know, maybe you have a different relationship with your mom. I mean, come on, you know, it's bad enough you're trying to, you know, be cool. It was not cool.
What's not cool? Put a damper on the cool.
Cool, Mom.
So obviously a lot of this conversation is about how your relationship with your mom is complicated, right? There was so much good and there was also a lot of struggle.
Yeah.
Despite the struggles that you saw your mom go through, one thing that you said is that she always told you that you were brilliant and that she was proud of you. How did those affirmations from her really allow you to kind of step into the fullness of who you are?
Yeah. It took a long time and a lot of little tiny stepping, but I think that those words always resonated deep inside me. You know, when I told her I was going to quit high school for the first time, because I quit it twice.
That's impressive.
Yeah. If you don't do it right the first time, do it again. So when I told her that I was quitting high school, she's like, yeah. Like kind of nothing fazed her, I suppose. And she's like, okay, you know, I'm here for you. She said, I love you. I support you. I know you're kind of too smart for school, so I am not surprised at all. But you know, and she would tell me this every time I would screw up or do something that was, you know, not the norm. She would always tell me that she was proud of me, that I was brilliant, and that she loved me no matter what. So despite, you know, everything that she was going through, I knew in her heart of hearts, you know, and the other thing that she would always tell me is like, you're the best thing that I ever did in my life. And that was, you know, it kind of gets you, right? But at the same time, it's like, Mom, you've done so many amazing things, but she just didn't see it. You know, to her, I was her biggest accomplishment. So I guess part of me was like, okay, I guess I either have to live up to that, or, you know, at least take it seriously and take it to heart. So,
yeah.
So then how did you reconcile this like real deep love that you shared with your mom, and then also the frustrations and the struggles that you also had with your mom?
I think I'm still reconciling it to some degree.
Yes.
You know, as she got older and, you know, she lived in Atlanta. So I literally, you know, moved as far away from her as I possibly could. I moved to Seattle, not to get away from her necessarily, but I just, you know, so like I said, it was complicated. We were not, at one point I stopped talking to her for like 2 years because of her drinking. And not that I was drinking any less, but I couldn't tolerate her drinking anymore. So kind of a weird, you know, like how can I judge her when,
Yeah.
you know, but it's
interesting when the mirror of the person closest to us is too much for us to see consistently because of what maybe our own choices or things that we're frustrated by. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just like, no, I stopped talking to her for like 2 years. During that 2-year time, she did not do any personal work because I just, like I said, she didn't know how, she couldn't figure it out, but she did stop drinking. which kind of created a different weird dynamic. Now here she wasn't drinking, but she still had that personality. And I think, a lot of people that do that and don't do the work to support it still have all the demons. So she still had those, but she wasn't drinking. So in some ways it was weirder a little bit, because now I'm like walking on eggshells and she's walking on eggshells around me. And I think it even was more of a strain, if that's possible. I did have to, I think, for my own self-preservation and my own self-exploration, keep her at bay and keep her at distance. We were talking about regrets the other day, Brittany, and I think, maybe I think I could have tried a little bit harder to connect with her, but there was part of me that just couldn't. I had to just keep that distance, even though she wasn't drinking. So I think it was hard on her, for sure. But you realize that somebody else's stuff is not your stuff. You have your own whatever. So that's her journey, and that was her, that was not my journey. So I had to take my own journey, which, got me to where I am today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Follow-up question. What was that like, beginning to identify where your mom ended and you started?
Yeah. Ooh, that's a good one. It was good. Like I said, I needed that distance to know that, yeah, okay, maybe I have my own issues, but they're my issues. I'm not blaming her. I'm not, shaming her. I'm not doing anything else. If anything, I think I wish that I could have helped her in some way, but I couldn't help myself. And I was trying to help myself instead of. I don't know if that answers.
Yeah, it's the idea of making sure that your own oxygen mask is on.
Exactly. And half the time I didn't even know where the oxygen mask was. So once I found it, I did put it on and be like, oh, okay, that's all right.
It's easy to look back in, with decades of retrospect and be like, well, I could have done this, or I could have said this. And in reality, you didn't have those tools or perspectives at the time.
No, I didn't have those tools. So I had to acquire those tools, because clearly she didn't have those tools and wasn't even looking for the toolbox. So.
Right.
So how does your mom's influence show up in your coaching practice now?
A lot of the things that I focus on with my coaching practice, either with or without horses, and horses are a really cool way to get people into themselves very quickly. I like to focus on that first step, which is just awareness. What is going on? Where, when something comes up for you, where is it? It's in your body. So let's start there and just build those awareness keys and triggers to be like, okay, oh, this is why I'm creating that story, and have, help people to understand that they aren't their stories. That, like you said before, everything that's happened has happened for us and not to us. And that's kind of the approach that I've taken now that I have clarity around what happened in my past.
Right.
Created the person and the, emotional intelligence that I have today.
Yeah, that's huge. And that perspective is a really hard one to grab a hold of when you're in the middle of the pain.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do they always say? Like, speak from the scar and not from the wound.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mean I should wait to post about it on Facebook?
Yeah. Right? Yeah. Oh my God. Please.
What do you, let's bring your mom again back into the present.
Yeah.
What do you think she would say about you, the life you're living, the impact you're having?
She'd say, I told you so. I told you were brilliant. I told you. Now listen, I sound really egotistical when I say those things, but she was always the mom that, when I did stand-up comedy, she was in the front row. She was laughing the hardest and the loudest. She was clapping the loudest and the hardest. And she was poking everyone around her, going, "That's my daughter. That's my daughter. She's amazing. Look at how funny she is." And I mean, like, so I think that that's what she would say now, is that I believed in you. I knew you could do it. And, bless you for hanging in there. So.
Yeah, huge. What are some of the things that you do to honor your mom's legacy in your daily life?
That's a good one. I feel like I haven't until now. And that was why this podcast, first episode, was really important to me, because I feel like I didn't give her the credit that she deserved. She didn't give it to herself, and I didn't give it to her. But she definitely was an amazing, cool person. And it would have been great if we could have celebrated that together. But we never did. So I guess that's why I'm here today.
Yeah. It's not too late.
It's never too late. It's never too late. It's never too late to start a podcast at 65. So
it's so true though.
Yeah.
And we laugh about it, but I think that's, from even just knowing you personally, that is one of the messages that you live by, that I'm so inspired by consistently, is that it's never too late. Like, if you feel that there's more, right? There's more in you.
There's always more. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't believe that you've like reached the peak and just give up and wait to die. Like, that sounds so morbid, but that's what a lot of people do, is we reach a certain point in our life and we think we've hit the peak and this is it. And it's time for me to just kind of exist. And then,
but even if you know there's something else out there, how do you go about it? Right. And that's kind of my job as a coach, is to help people go through that transformational experience of, there's this thing I want. I'm at a spot in my life where I think I feel pretty comfortable, but yet I know I want to go after this other thing. Okay, well, let's dig into that. Let's explore that. How do you get there? Why do you feel stuck? So all those good things. But yeah.
Yeah,
you guys are coaches,
Well, yeah, I mean,
similar passions.
Right. Yeah. What's coming up for me is, you have had seasons where you have felt stuck and know what it feels like to get unstuck, which then makes you such a believable party to help other people do that.
Yeah. Thanks.
And my experience of you is you practice what you preach.
Thank you.
Even starting a podcast. So as a third-party affirmation of Sue, like, I'm inspired by your commitment to live out what you're talking about right now. We've observed that in your life.
Aw, you guys are so sweet. I'm going to start crying here.
Our goal is to make Sue cry.
She just ends the podcast.
Right.
So I was going to say, as we wrap up this first episode, in light of what you do as a transformational life coach now, everything that you observed and learned from your mom growing up, what is the message? I feel like we probably touched on it a little bit, but what is the message that you hope to share with others that you coach?
Yeah, I will kind of reiterate what I said earlier, and that is just, show up, as your true self. And if you're not sure what your true self is, do some exploring. There's going to be layers that you're going to have to peel back, and it may or may not be comfortable always, probably not, but it's okay. Once you peel back those layers, it's like, I think about there's a couple of good analogies. There's the butterfly, right? Which I just recently found out that the caterpillar totally disintegrates in that little pod. I'm like, what? No. Oh my God.
Turns to goo.
Right. Turns to goo. And so I think, if you're okay turning to goo, embrace your vulnerability, embrace that discomfort that you're going to feel, because when you come out on the other side, it's going to be amazing. So,
yeah. The other thing I love about the butterfly analogy is that the caterpillar already has all the components within it to turn into a butterfly. So
true.
Every season of our life, we already have, like, we're collecting more of what we need to become who we're meant to become.
Yeah. And I've had a few disintegrations, but it's like I come out and I'm like kind of half formed. I got like one wing and a half an antenna, and I'm like, go back in there, melt some more. But you're right. We all have the pieces that we need. We just need to access them. And that's why I was drawn to coaching, because it's so important to have someone who is a neutral third party that can help guide you and support you and, kind of show you the path.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We've talked a lot about addiction today. To put a bow on that, what is something you would offer to people who have a loved one struggling with addiction? Like, I feel like I don't want to move on from this without you sharing some wisdom, because so many people live with this.
Yeah.
I struggled with alcohol myself for many years. I started drinking at a very young age because, sometimes people don't like to drink alone. Anyway, that's another whole episode to unpack. But, I drank a lot and had a problem with alcohol, and, still held down jobs and was, had successful careers and so on and so forth. But I got to a point where I'm like, you know what? This is no longer suiting me, and it is not serving me well at all. So about 2.5 years ago, I quit drinking, and I mentioned that my mom quit drinking kind of cold turkey. I did the same thing, but I had gotten to a point in my life where I had done so much self-work that I'm like, okay, this is another thing that is no longer serving me. So let's get rid of it. I'm not an AA person. I think it's great for some people, but I felt that I had the tools and I had the ability to do it by myself, right? Which I did. And I never looked back. I also wanted a lot more clarity in my life, which I've gotten. So my advice is that, not everyone can do that, right? Be okay with asking for help and seeking out resources that resonate with you. Like I said, AA is not for everyone. There are a lot of people out there that are, going through this and have gone through this that can be supportive in a way that, just you have to find the resources that resonate with you, and you also have to want it badly enough. It's just like anything else in life, right? You have to want it badly enough to go through the pain and the discomfort and the peeling back the layers, because there's a lot of that's going to happen as well. Yeah. So that's what I would say is, if you know you have a problem or you think you have a problem, get some support. Tell somebody. Probably there's somebody waiting there to help you anyway. So
Absolutely.
Just reach out. Yeah.
Thanks. So for those that are listening to this episode, and they're inspired by your story, and they're interested in what you do as a transformational life coach.
Yes.
How can they get a hold of you? How can they work with you?
They can find me, thanks to my creative partner, Brittany, at my fabulous website, willoughbycoaching.com. And I will put that link in the show notes. You can also follow me on the Instagrams. If you're on the Instagrams, at Sue_Willoughby. And I'm marginally on Facebook, but I would say Instagram and my website are the best way to reach out.
Awesome.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you so much for letting us do this with you today.
Yes,
Sue.
it was brilliant. Thank you so much. And we're going to unpack your journey on another episode so you can have the spotlight all to yourselves. Thank you, Brittany and Ed, and thank you everyone for listening today. If you liked what you heard, go to your favorite podcast platform and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, because we don't want you to come down with a bad case of FOMO, because we have some amazing episodes coming up. And we'll be back here next week with another amazing interview, and we'll see you then.